Whiting with Paddle TV with another kayak comparison. And in this video, I am comparing two budget kayaks. And when I say budget kayaks, I'm not saying crappy kayaks. I'm saying budget-friendly or inexpensive kayaks. This is the Tucktec, and this is the Sea Eagle 330. Now, I've reviewed and compared both of these kayaks with other kayaks. I compared the Tucktec with the Oru Kayak Inlet, and I compared the Sea Eagle 330 to the Intex Challenger. And I'll leave a link to those videos in the description box down below. But you asked me to compare these two, and so that's what I'm doing. And so we're gonna start off by, well, I'm gonna give you a bit more information about both of these kayaks. The Tucktec is a folding recreational kayak with a retail price of $350. It's 10 feet long, it's 30 inches wide, it weighs 28 pounds or 13 kilos, and it has a capacity of 300 pounds or 136 kilos. The Sea Eagle 330 is a recreational inflatable kayak. It has a retail price between $230 to $280 US, depending on the package you get, but it comes with a paddle, pump, and a carrying bag. It's 11 feet 1 inch long, it's 34 inches wide, it weighs 26 pounds or 12 kilos, and it has a max capacity of 500 pounds or 227 kilos. Now, right out of the gate, the biggest difference between these two kayaks is the fact that the Tucktec is a solo kayak. It's designed for one paddler. The Sea Eagle 330 is actually designed for one or two paddlers. Depending on the package you get, you can get the kayak with one seat and a paddle, or two seats and two paddles. It gets away with it because it's longer and it has a capacity of 500 pounds, a far cry from the 300 pounds of the Tucktec. Now let's talk about portability first. These are both portable kayaks and they both weigh in around 26 and 28 pounds, a very similar weight. So in terms of moving these things around, very similar. The Sea Eagle does come with a carrying bag, which makes it a little easier to get around, but not a big deal. Now when it comes to assembly, they're both very easy and quick to assemble. They take literally minutes. The Tucktec gets the edge because it's just a little faster, maybe a minute or two faster to put together. But in terms of portability, these kayaks are very similar. Now, when it comes to stability, well, you know what? They're both very similar. They're both extremely stable kayaks. Now, the Tucktec is 30 inches wide, a little narrower, but you're sitting lower in this kayak. And so even though it's narrower, your center of gravity is lower. And so it's as stable as the 34-inch wide Sea Eagle that you're sitting a little higher in. Now, when it comes to performance, that's where these kayaks start to differ. They're both entry-level or gateway kayaks, I like to call them. These are kayaks that people get to test the water, to see if kayaking is something that they like. If it is, and you want to have more fun kayaking, well, you are naturally going to upgrade both of these kayaks. But you are going to need to upgrade the Tucktec first. And the reason for that is because the Sea Eagle is a much more versatile kayak. The Sea Eagle can handle a variety of conditions because it's inflatable and it's not going to swamp. Even if water gets inside, well, it's got a drain plug, but also it's full of air. And so you're not going to completely swamp and sink. That means it can handle rough water. It can handle bigger bodies of water like lakes that can get some wind waves. It can even handle small rapids up to like class 2 whitewater. The Tucktec is strictly for flat water, very flat water, because this thing can swamp very easily if you get any type of waves, and if it swamps, you're swimming. The benefit of the Tucktec is that because it's a hard shell, because it has a pointier bow, and because it's only 30 inches wide instead of 34 inches wide like the Sea Eagle, it is a little faster, but it's not a lot faster. Now let's talk durability. Starting off with the Tucktec is a hard shell, and so right out of the gate, you don't have to worry about a puncture with this kayak. It is something to be aware of with the Sea Eagle, but inflatable kayaks, quality inflatable kayaks, are surprisingly hard to puncture. They can take a lot of not abuse, a lot of use. The fact that both kayaks come with a 3-year warranty it says a lot. And you can take a lot of comfort in knowing that it has a 3-year warranty. But the inflatable, the 330, it can still get a puncture. On the flip side, the Tucktec, it's not so much that it's going to get a puncture. The risk factor with this boat is that there's a lot of hardware in this boat, and there's a lot of screws and rivets. There's a lot of things that can otherwise go wrong with this boat. And the problem with the Tucktec on the durability side is if one of these things goes wrong, this kayak is not going to float. You will end up having to swim to shore. Whereas in the Sea Eagle 330, like nearly any quality inflatable kayak, if you get a puncture in one tube, it's not the end of the world. I mean, it's a problem, but this kayak has 3 different chambers, a floor and then the 2 side tubes. If one of them goes, you're not going to sink. You can still limp your way back to shore. It's not going to be fun, but you can get there. Now the Tucktec also, where the plastic bends, it's clearly stressed plastic. It is a weak point. It's absolutely a weak point. But my feeling is that you're not going to paddle this enough times for that stressed plastic to actually break, unless you leave the kayak in the sun for years, for extended periods of time, and use it a ton. Now, when it comes to comfort, these are recreational kayaks and they're pretty wide open. And so you have freedom of movement. They're comfortable kayaks. The Sea Eagle may get a little edge just because it's inflatable in nature and the seat is more comfortable. The one drawback of the Sea Eagle is that it doesn't have foot supports, whereas the Tucktec has a very basic foot support system, but a foot support system. And if you're paddling for a long period of time, having foot supports does reduce leg fatigue. Now let's talk safety. Now, a lot of people would look at these 2 kayaks and think, well, you know what? The fact that the inflatable kayak can puncture on the water, if you hit something sharp, you'd have to really hit something sharp, that makes it less safe. And I would disagree with that. And the reason I would disagree with that is for the reason I gave before. This kayak is made up of 3 chambers. You got the 2 side chambers and then the floor. If one of those chambers gets punctured, pops, loses its air, then you still have 2 chambers and you're still going to float and you can paddle this thing to shore. Whereas this kayak, if something fails, the Tucktec, you're out of luck. There's nothing to float this boat. Now the Tucktec, on the other hand, if this thing swamps, I mean, you're not going anywhere. This boat will virtually sink if it swamps. And you're gonna have to swim to shore and get somebody or try to drag the boat to shore. It's gonna be really hard to deal with. And that's why it's so important that if you choose this kayak, you stick to calm water. And when I talk about calm water, flat water, I'm not talking about flat water that's flat right now. I'm talking about water that's always going to be flat. It doesn't matter if a windstorm or a thunderstorm rolls through unexpectedly, the water is going to stay relatively calm. And that means you're in protected water. You're in small bodies of water. There's not enough water for waves to really build up. and you're even protected from the wind. So we're talking about very small lakes, ponds, rivers with minimal current. Whereas the Sea Eagle, you can take into a much wider range of water environments. So let's just summarize all of this really quick. The benefits or the pros of the Tucktec. Well, for one thing, it can't be punctured. The second thing is that it's a little faster to assemble. And the third big thing is that it's a little faster to paddle. Now the benefits of the Sea Eagle 330. For one, it has a higher, significantly higher max capacity. It takes up to 500 pounds versus 300 pounds. It can be used as either a single kayak or as a tandem kayak. It's also significantly cheaper than the Tucktec. At $230 starting versus $350, that's quite a difference. It also comes with a paddle. So it's not only the $100 plus of savings you get with the Sea Eagle, but you also need to get a paddle with the Tucktec, which a very baseline paddle, which isn't going to be that enjoyable to use, is going to be about $50. You're going to have to spend $100, $150 to get a quality paddle that'll be comfortable to use. The Sea Eagle is also much more versatile. You can take it into a wide range of water conditions, including up to Class 2 whitewater and bigger bodies of water that can get waves. And the reason you can do that is because it's not going to swamp. And as I mentioned before, even if it did get a puncture, for one, you can repair a puncture later, but you can get to shore even if one of the tubes are punctured. So to summarize my feelings on these two kayaks, they're both decent gateway kayaks. If I had to choose, it wouldn't be a very hard choice. I would definitely go for the Sea Eagle 330, not even considering price. But the fact that the Sea Eagle 330 is $100 less and you get a paddle with that makes it a clear winner. If you just don't want an inflatable kayak, you want a folding kayak, the Tucktec isn't a bad option. I just think you can do better. The Oru Kayak Lake is the base model of Oru Kayak, and it costs about $150 more than the Tucktec, but it's a significantly higher quality kayak, and it only weighs 17 pounds. So there you have it, my comparison of the Sea Eagle 330 versus the Tucktec. I hope you've enjoyed this one. I'm sure many of you will have some strong opinions because, you know, the cool thing about both of these kayaks is a lot of the people who have these kayaks love them and are very vocal about that. So share your comments. I've only taken both of these kayaks for pretty short test paddles, not extended ones. I haven't had them a whole season. So share your learnings from these kayaks if you've been paddling them longer than I have. And let me know what other kayaks you want me to compare, because I enjoy comparing kayaks and I hope you get some value out of it. And we'll see you soon for another gear review, paddling tip, or paddling adventure.